In this video, I'll show you how I painted up these dragon miniatures from the Return to Dark Tower board game. Hello everyone, my name is Spencer and I'm trying to become a better miniature painter, diorama maker, and hobbyist, and this is the second video of painting up all the miniatures from the Return to Dark Tower board game. This is my wife's current favorite board game, and she asked me to go through and paint these guys up. These models are very nicely detailed and are in quite engaging poses. Like, the only downside is that they have the exact same flat base. So to build up some visual variety, I'll take some watered down white glue and some various sizes of ballast and glue it down to the base. My wife, when I asked her how she would like them painted up, she mentioned that she would like one green dragon and one red dragon. And to differentiate them, I took one base and I tried to make it a barren, rocky landscape for the green dragon, and then I had a fun idea to try and make the red dragon standing atop a pile of gold. So one of the dragons got a couple layers of white glue, medium-sized ballast, small, and then the other dragon got several layers of fine ballast and glue. Building it up so it looks like the dragon is perched on top of a mound of gold. Once everything had time to dry, I put them to painting handles and took them outside for a black prime. Putting down a piece of paper to collect some airbrush overspray, I then came into each of the dragon's underbellies to do some undershading and some necessary preemptive steps to help bring out some of the recessed details for the dragons. Just to go back to basics, I decided to stick to Vallejo's BSL color system. Vallejo develops their paints in a base shadow light formula. So the red dragon got a Nocturnal Red, Scarlet Red, and Bloody Red, growing up to the highest highlights. I did also make sure to leave the red dragon's arms and underbelly white just to create a nice contrast. Then the green dragon got the BSL dark green, angel green, and goblin green, still from Vallejo. I did end up covering a bit more of the underbelly with this dragon, especially because I thought the cream didn't pair with the green as well as the red. I debated keeping the interior of the wings the same color as the dragons, but ultimately I decided to brown them up with Charred brown, earth, and plague brown, except instead of using the airbrush for all of it, I busted out a makeup brush to stipple on the lighter colors, just to have some increased control and a bit more texture in the wing. Next, both of the dragon mouths got painted up with a deep magenta, warlord purple, and squid pink color, picking out the raised highlights of the tongue. Once all the highlights had a chance to dry, however, to bring it back to a fleshy mouth color, I did put on a glaze of Vallejo's Gory Red. For the horns and talons on the dragon, I actually departed from the Vallejo guides and moved on to a pro acryl, where I based all the horns with a Vallejo leather brown, and then I built up to gradual tones of a Vallejo bone white, slowly incorporating it as I went along. However, for the teeth, I did just come in and paint those up with a bone white. Later on, I'll come in with a thinned down glaze of the leather brown just to bring it back into a bit more realistic tooth color. While I pick out the highlights of the bones with the increasing bone white into the leather brown, I'd like to talk a bit about the dragons and what they do in the game. Part of the main gameplay loop in Dark Tower is improving your character and trying to defeat the aforementioned tower. And you upgrade your character by collecting treasures. These dragons actually spawn in on the map as you play, and not only do a lot of damage, but they actually steal your treasures away from you. So they're a very unique enemy in the way that you kind of want to be away from them to not lose your stuff, but also you want to attack them and get close to them. Once the horns had their highlight, I came in with a glaze of Proakryl's dark golden brown just to bring in some more of the dirtiness of the horns. I could then take more of just the glaze medium and push the wash off the highest, most raised parts of the horns that I wanted to stay the bone white color. To beat these dragons in the game, you have to amass a certain amount of units and fight a few combats with them usually, but thankfully there's only 2 at most at any given time, so it's actually pretty manageable. Next, I moved on to the rocks, painting them up with just a standard layer of Stonewall Gray from Vallejo. Moving on to the gold mound on one of the dragons, I took the Vallejo Arcane Gold True Metallic Metal series to paint it up, just basing it and then shading it, and then putting a little bit of the light back on top. To give the rock some more life, I took a black wash from Proakryl and put it on all the lower edged areas of the rocks, just making sure not to put any on top of the rocks. I also decided that I wanted to deepen the shadows of the wings with a violet ink. I'm still learning how to use inks, and I was really happy with how the violet turned out, but then I used a skin ink and it turned into a very intense orange kind of accidentally, but once it dried, it was a little less vibrant, so I decided to stick with it. Moving back to the gold for a second, I took a dry brush and then put on a pretty heavy layer of the base gold again, and then I did a much lighter and controlled dry brushing of the light. The green dragon's base got ultimately a very similar treatment to the reds, except there was no gold to be found, and the gray and the black wash was applied to the entirety of the base. Once everything had the chance to dry, I could then satin varnish them to protect them for the next step. Once the varnish had 24 hours to set, I could then prep a black magenta oil wash. My main goal with this was to just make a nice oil wash to seep into the rivets of the scales for both of the dragons, while also complementing and bringing some undertones of life into the models. I knew that the violet wash would work perfectly on the red dragon, as red and purple are complementary colors, but I was also really happy with how it turned out on the green, and if anything, it just made them look a little bit more similar and like part of the same genus of animal. I gave the wash 30 minutes to dry, and realistically, I should have probably stuck to closer to 15 to get it a little bit brighter, but I came in with a makeup brush, lightly dabbed in Glamsol, and just lightly whipped away wherever I wanted the brightest highlights to be. I gave the oil wash a couple days to dry, and because I'm expecting these miniatures to be played with, I will varnish them again. And once the varnish set, I could come in with some plague brown, sun yellow, and moon yellow to create some vibrant eyes, and then paint some eyelids on them to complete all the minimum details on these dragons. For the absolute final details on the model, this true metallic metal has been varnished multiple times, so I wanted to bring back some of its vibrancy by just sponging on some of the lighter colors. And then I wanted the green dragon to have a little bit more visual interest, so I brought in some red and white pigment powder just to brush over it, just to make it seem like a bit more of a barren, ashy wasteland where he's protecting or hunting. Then, once I was happy with how it was looking, I could paint the sides black, and we can move on to some glamour shots. I would like to take this moment to say thank you to each of you who stayed through to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. I like sharing my hobbies, and this is just a great creative outlet for me. If you like this project and want to stay up to date with other Dark Tower mini paintings, Star Wars Legion 40K, dioramas, what have you, please feel free to like and subscribe. But other than that, I hope you all have an excellent week, and I'll see you in the next one.